Hey everybody, it's Norm from Tested.
And it's Jeremy from Tested.
Welcome to Projections, our show about VR, and we have some new hardware to talk about. You can see on the table we have a bunch of HTC Vives, and specifically the new HTC Vive Pro.
One of these things is not like the other.
It's blue. So we've been using it for a couple weeks now, and this will be our review. So quickly first, what's different and new about the Vive Pro?
Compared to the original Vive.
Yep.
So we have, the biggest news is a resolution bump.
Yes.
You know the numbers?
Yeah, it's 2880 by 1600, split between two panels, of course. And this is an OLED display, OLED displays in a sub-pixel arrangement, pentile sub-pixel arrangement. And that's compared to a 2160 by 1200, also split into two on the original Vive, which was the same as on the current Oculus Rift.
It also incorporates a lot of the aspects of the deluxe audio strap, which was an upgrade for the Vive that you could buy last year, including integrated audio. So that's huge. It has a nice rigid band around the back. It's actually a little bit heavier than the original HTC Vive, but it distributes the weight far better, so I would say that's an improvement.
Yeah, the extra padding you have on the front and the back, and the ease of which this gets put on, I think makes this the most comfortable desktop VR headset.
It doesn't have a changed field of view. That is the same. It also has the exact same optics as the HTC Vive. So you're going to get the same, any kind of ghosting that you saw, not ghosting, but God rays and field of view.
And the sweet spot also is roughly the same. The built-in headphones sound good. You know, the deluxe audio head strap ones sounded good as well, but that was adapted onto the original Vive, so you had the option of not using those and just using your own headphones. Here, you're locked into these headphones.
The breakout box is a little bit different. The thing that the cable here connects to at your computer, this cable, by the way, is a completely different design. This is a proprietary cable with proprietary connectors. It combines the DisplayPort, USB and power into its own connector that goes to a breakout box that actually has its own power button now to turn it on and off. It actually also only accepts DisplayPort now, so you don't have the option of HDMI or DisplayPort inputs.
And that cable, same length as this other cable. I think the new design makes it a little bit less likely to get tangled, but you have about maybe 3 inches of shorter actual use of the cable because the cable has a coil around this headset. Where it plugs in, same proprietary connector that HTC has, and next to that is a USB-C port, so that's different from the USB-A port, which some people use for power for third-party accessories.
Well, supposedly you could do that here too, I imagine. Right now it's used for nothing at all.
And it's kind of in a weird place too, so it's not as easily accessible.
This was already weird, and this was slightly more accessible.
Yeah.
There's also notably no headphone jack on the Vive Pro, as there was on this one, which was you know, that's what it shipped with, was a headphone jack.
Yep. And the front, you'll also notice there are 2 cameras. Now, out of the box, this works just fine in Steam VR. No special software needed. To get the Vive Pro working, you have your Tron chaperone mode, we like to describe it as, and also a pass-through camera. But the second camera is not enabled yet.
Everything just uses the one camera.
Yeah,
I look forward to seeing what they can use that for. It'd be interesting to see that Tron mode in a 3-dimensional thing, if they can combine the optics in some way. But so far, HTC says nothing about that.
But really, the flagship upgrade here are the new displays. This is ostensibly why you'd be paying $800 just for this headset.
$800?
You knew it was $800. And that's without the base stations, without the controllers. If you want those version 1 base stations, it's an extra $300.
So you're talking about $1,100 all in if you're starting from scratch, compared to $500 all in for the original Vive right now.
Although I would call that $600 because I'd highly recommend the deluxe audio head strap.
Excellent point.
But the qualitative analysis of these displays, 70% more pixels, I think it's noticeable for sure.
70% sounds like a lot. When I put this headset on, I expect to see, you know, a dramatic improvement. And I would say there is an improvement. However, it's not quite as much as I expected.
And that's both because of the actual perception of it and also because how games are using these pixels. If you do an A/B test, and you'll see the images here, you're going to notice, yes, in the Steam menus, you can see the text is better resolved. You don't have to stand as close to the menus to read the descriptions. If you're playing a game like Space Pirate Trainer, the details in the background are sharper and more clear.
The spinning billboard that you see up there is now actually crystal clear rather than slightly blurry.
And if you play a game like Elite Dangerous that's made for desktop, made for high density displays on a 2D screen, this is going to help as well for all those panels.
I would say even games that don't require this level of fidelity look like noticeably better. I played Fruit Ninja, and the strawberries are now popping out of the screen. I mean, everything, the geometry of things looks more solid because the screen door effect is reduced.
It's not that it's gone completely. I think it's still there. I think that sub-pixel arrangement that you find on the original Vive, which I would describe as more like a triangle sub-pixel arrangement as opposed to a grid, a rectangular grid, that I still find is noticeable. There is still aliasing. It's not perfect. It's not Ready Player One. In the games that you play a lot, so we're jumping into a variety of games as we're testing this and doing the A/B comparisons, and yes, you can notice that difference. But in games you play regularly, every other day, or maybe every day, you're going to notice that difference immediately.
Yeah, and it doesn't necessarily, as I said, need to be an experience that requires that high resolution. Things like Rec Room is full of flat shaded objects and flat colors, but it just looks crisper, and as things go further into the distance, you retain an ability to resolve them. Like duck season, the ducks that are far away, they just look more like geometric ducks rather than a few pixels flapping around.
But I think there's a difference between a difference that you notice immediately and a lasting difference. And that's something, as using this over these past few weeks, we've noticed is that lasting difference really isn't there. Well, my world isn't changed by having this.
No, and part of the problem is there's nothing made from the ground up that needs that resolution. Almost all of the major VR titles are developed for that old school resolution.
Yeah.
And so this adds a nice fidelity to that, but it certainly isn't something that was built from the ground up for it. Maybe that's not the reason. Maybe it's just not enough pixels to make a huge, life-changing difference.
And in terms of display optics, it's not just the actual displays that make a difference. If we're talking also about field of view, the quality of the pixels.
Right.
If we're talking about PSVR, where the display resolution is only 1080p, I still find that incredibly enjoyable because they use RGB stripe for that OLED. It's much fuller subpixels, and that's something that HTC could have done here. Instead, they went with the same type of panel, higher density, yes, but same field of view, and didn't do anything special like HDR displays, which I know are further in the future.
I would say one use case that actually does lend itself to the high resolution very well is big screen. Like if you're sitting in the movie theater, previously with the current generation headsets, I just want a little bit more, just give me a few more pixels so that I can take in that 1080p video that I'm watching on that fake movie screen in the distance. And I would say this delivers that. Like I'm now watching movies and I can resolve everything that I want to. I can pull up my desktop, I can put it on the screen, and I can see the names of my icons, and I can type
definitely a little better
into the
than
address
before.
bar. But that's all that I needed. And I would say that is maybe the best use case for this. If you're watching a lot of movies, maybe this is for you. On the other hand, like we have a $200 Oculus Go headset coming out that has a resolution bump as well, not as high as this,
but fuller subpixels.
Right, and it's only $200, and for watching movies, that's like what that device is going to be made for.
Media is absolutely a great use case for this.
Yeah.
In big screen watching, if high bit rate, full resolution screens, but not good enough for productivity. I don't think this is good enough where you can pull up a virtual desktop and pull up a Google Doc and start typing and not still have it be really
Oh my
big.
God, we are so far away from that. Yeah. Like we need the field of view bumped. We need all kinds of things.
I'm not even sure 4K headsets can do that.
Right. So did you notice any performance decrement when you were using this headset compared to your original Vive?
I use a 1070 at home, and it ran just fine. No additional frame rate drops, and honestly, I wouldn't consider that a problem. If you're already in the market for an $800 headset, you probably have the money to spend on a good graphics card that can run this at 90 frames per second, and enough software is out there that lets you do scaling so you can actually render at lower than this resolution, that this isn't going to be a problem.
I had read that the Fallout on a 1070 Ti had issues with this headset when you turned off the built-in Steam scaling. So it made the visuals look much better, but it killed the frame rate. So it's certainly going to be something that you're going to want to consider in terms of what kind of video card you have and how many more pixels this has that it will have to drive. And so at the end of the day, this is not worth $800 to me. And it's hard for me to imagine who this is for. I imagine there are people out there who have a ton of money, who just want the best VR experience possible. Well, here it is. Like, this is the highest resolution that you can get right now for a home headset.
And the other headsets are still available. I mean, the reason we don't call this last gen, the original Vive, and we don't call this next gen, is because they're the same generation.
Yeah.
You know, this is it's a tick, not a big talk step up. And the original Vive is still available for $500 with with the base stations, with the controllers. So if you're new to VR, I still say buy that Vive package if you want room scale VR, and in the future maybe update to the wireless headset, the wireless accessory.
See, that's the thing, is they've also announced the wireless solution for this, for both of the Vives, and that's going to be more transformative. For what we've used of the wireless solutions really does change the way that you interact with your surroundings. You're no longer tangled in your cable, and you're losing track so much more of what direction you're facing.
And that's the kind of upgrade that will benefit you despite what the game was made for.
Exactly.
Right? Whereas games that are made for the current Vive and the current Rift and current PSVR, you may not get a huge bump in here. Those games, when you're untethered, I think is a transformative experience. That's what this is not, a transformative VR experience. It's better, it is noticeably better.
It's expensive.
And yes, there will be some business customers for which $800, not a problem. Location-based experiences.
HTC said that's who they made it for. They had a lot of requests for these better features from their commercial clients, and that's who they made it for.
Right, but they had 2 years to do R&D on this,
yeah.
Right? This original Vive is 2 years old, and the decisions they made for this upgrade, I think, could have been different. I think they could have chosen a different type of panel. They could have went for wider field of view. They could have went for some type of HDR display. I don't know, but that I feel like would feel more like a next generation headset. Here, it feels like it's still just slightly better.
I don't know, man. I would have bet on high resolution having a huge impact. I just expected it to be more than this, and not to say it's not there. I mean, it is a noticeable impact. And when you go back to the current gen, you will notice the subpixels. You will notice the screen door effect more than you did before. There's that price. So my advice would be don't try it, because then when you go back, it's slightly painful. But that doesn't last. Once you're back, you're experiencing VR. It's more about the software than it is about the hardware. And right now, this is an interesting headset for certain people. It's just not for everybody.
Before we let you guys go, we want to talk about one game we've been playing recently and we're really excited about. It's not for the Vive or the Rift.
What?
It's actually for PSVR. It's Wipeout Omega Collection.
And now, I actually owned the Wipeout, one of these Wipeouts years ago. I've never been a huge fan, I'll be honest with you. I've never been a huge fan of this franchise because it's floaty.
Yeah.
And ever since like the original ones on PlayStation 1 or whatever it was, I always craved a tire to ground feeling.
The tactile, the grittiness.
Yeah, I want to skid and I want that kind of physics. And I always felt like they were cheating to some degree of having these floaty physics. But it's got a huge following.
The floaty physics really help for VR.
Dude, this is my favorite racing experience I've had in virtual reality, by far.
I think they took some of the lessons from Battlezone, which is also a PSVR game, in terms of how you have your head movement in a cockpit be independent of the rotational movement of your vehicle, and use that to great effect for the comfort in this game. Because when you tell me it on paper, you're in Wipeout, and these vehicles are flying at hundreds of kilometers a minute. I feel like it's going to get nauseous, and it's not.
They're pushing it, man, and power to them. PlayStation's been pushing the envelope when it comes to motion sickness, in a sense, ever since they got involved in VR. And I think that's great, because there's some people out there who they don't want to play unless it's got full-fledged motion through the world or intense experiences. And they're now finding well, how can we push that while keeping the motion sickness down? They're pushing an envelope that I think a lot of people, rightly so, might be afraid to touch.
Well, I think they have to, because their system and their tracking is a little bit more limited than the Rift or the Vive. And so the cockpit games have really been successful on PSVR. And here there are a range of comfort options. You can have a little bit of blinders in your cockpit, and the cockpit by itself already adds some comfort. And then you can have the head movement and head tracking be independent independent of the vehicle or with the vehicle.
Right, so you can do barrel rolls in this game. You can actually attach the camera to the barrel rolls.
Yeah.
That's not for me.
No.
But even the limited setting is still extremely intense. I was floored by this game. I mean, the tight turns are, they're hard to do in VR. I'm not sure that they would be as hard if you were playing 2D, maybe a camera behind the ship.
Well, you can play the camera behind the ship as a view option. And I think anyone knows with field of view, the further you are away from your moving object, the more comfortable it's going to be, right? If you're playing third person, you can move pretty quickly and it doesn't feel that fast. When you're in first person, in Wipeout, even at the medium CC setting, right? Now we're not talking about Phantom, we're just talking about like C class or B class. It feels fast.
It feels fast, and it feels like a different game. I mean, to me, it feels like now I want to play the hell out of this game. The weapons feel like huge, and I'm firing them, and the effects are happening all around me. And when I crash into another ship, I feel like I feel that sensation. And the roller coaster-like tracks, where I'm going up and then I'm curving down. I mean, it is an oh my god, oh my god, oh my god kind of sensation.
Both those sensations are amazing. When you're going up, it actually benefits VR because you can lean forward and look up along the track.
Yeah.
Right? You are controlling the camera. And the same side, when you're going down, you can't look over the front of your ship, so it feels more like that roller coaster, like the unexpected dip into the unknown.
Yeah.
And the fact that you're playing alongside other people who may not be in VR.
You're talking about the online mode.
Yeah, in the online mode, I think is awesome. You get a lot more players that way, and it feels great when you beat them.
Yeah, I don't know if it's fair. I mean, it would be interesting to see like if you could only flag VR players,
right?
So that if you were into competition in any respect. But we were doing all right. Like we placed first a couple times.
And it is, the full Omega collection. So you have Wipeout HD, 2048, all those tracks going backwards. It's a lot of content there for a $40 game. And if you do 2 races, you're sold. Once you finish your second race, you'll be there for hours. And I was there, I think we were playing for 45 minutes last night and got a ton of races in and just wanted more.
I wonder what frame rate it's running at, because PSVR famously can do 120 hertz, which is beyond any of these guys. And I'll bet they're not pulling that off. It's got to be 60.
It's a good point where when we talk about the content and that versus the technical experience, PSVR has the worst tracking, has the lowest resolution headset. But when you're moving that fast and when you're that immersed in the game, it really doesn't matter. Yeah, you're going to see the jaggies, you're going to see aliasing all over the place.
Right.
But the game is that much fun.
And I actually prefer gamepad games on PSVR because that is, it's one-to-one more or less. And I don't mean the tracking aspect.
Right.
I just mean the actual control.
That's an interesting decision they made because it is a port. They didn't have the visualization of your gamepad. You have an avatar body, but it's holding a stick, and you can't. There's no hand presence in the game.
That's fine. Given the IR tracking solution that they have, that's a little bit, wonky, for lack of a better word. It's fine. Just give me the gamepad. It's a cockpit game. I'm in. Just the visuals of being in VR is enough to sell me. I'm gonna play this game a lot more.
Awesome. Well, that does it for us this week. We'll be back next week with more game coverage and hardware coverage. Thanks for watching. Like this video, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.